This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone has had a decent break in their day. We'd like to go ahead and resume our council budget work session today. So with that, I would like to remind everyone, if you just acknowledge, council members, if you acknowledge when you have a question, I will call out on to you. And then also our citizen budget advisors, if you have a way to raise a question, get a hold of your councilman, your council representative, and then they will inform me so that I know that you have a question. So with that, I'd like to start with County Council. Ms. Dixon, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to be here today. It is definitely different than any other way we're used to doing this. We do have some people to thank for that. I would like to thank IT for the dedication and the hard work that they've given us to keep the council moving forward during this time. Please know that I do thank Nick Kuba, Brian Sill, George Bierman, and Bridget McCormick, just to name a few, and Alex from DSI working with us to train us on this WebEx program. I would also like to thank Kim Spence and her amazing team for all the work they give us all year. They're very easy to work with, and I appreciate that. And would also like to thank HCN for providing us their YouTube page for the streaming capability. As you will see with our budget and many of the other departments, the biggest change we have in our budget is related to personnel related issues and health. Other than that, we had some very minor changes, which I have went over with the council personally. If you have any questions for those, I would welcome them.
All right, Mila, I guess I'll go ahead and start first. I want to thank you personally for, all of your dedication and your commitment, not only in this budget process, working along with Kim and our budget office and our treasury department across the street, but your commitment and dedication to all of us each and every day here in the council. We truly appreciate all that you do, the staff that works with you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my council colleagues. Do any of you have any questions of Ms. Dixon?
Let's follow up.
Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to follow up with what the council president said. We probably don't have many questions because we had the opportunity to go over it with you directly. So, but I want to thank you for that time and everything, putting together this budget and being upfront with us the whole time with it and let us know what to expect. So thank you once again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Mr. Beulah.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Ms. Dixon for all the hard work. I just want to echo what County Council President said. And one quick question: are we getting new monitors?
I think right now with what we have going on, Mr. Beulah, that would be a no.
That's a good answer, Ms. Dixon. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Johnson.
Council President, I just want to echo the sentiments. Mila, listen, throughout this whole COVID-19 thing, you have been an integral part in keeping us afloat. We appreciate your dedication and your service and your commitment to the council. So I, from the bottom of my heart, and I know from the bottom of my colleagues' hearts, we thank you and appreciate you. There is one thing in the budget as far as personnel, and I think we had a conversation. I think for full transparency, if in the future going on, I think as far as the personnel, we also need to address the temporary or the part-time personnel for full transparency within the budget. So that's one thing that I would suggest that we do for our budget going forward.
I do understand that, Mr. Johnson, and I will work on budget with that for next year. The explanation and the reason why that is listed the way it is because it is considered one pin, one position. That is a shared position, but definitely we will look at that for next year.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? All right. And again, Ms. Dixon, I'm also going to thank Mr. Sill, Mr. Kuba, Mr. Bierman again for all their help in helping us come to the public and to all of you in a virtual format. So thank you again. And with that, we'll be moving on to the Board of Education. Did any of our citizen budget advisors have any questions for the council? All right, seeing none or hearing none. Good afternoon, Dr. Bolson. I want to let you know that our school board president, Mr. Robinson, is on board with us now. So just so you know, he's here. So I'd like to welcome you and turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So Council President Vicente, the entire council, thank you so much for giving us this time. I actually have Board President Jansen Robinson in the call. Cornell Brown, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, is here as well, as is Deborah Judd, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance. And I think I have some others probably listening in through the phone. But we just want to take a few minutes and answer any questions you have. I wanted to walk briefly through the budget that the Board of Education sent over to Mr. Glassman after they approved it at our February 10th board meeting. And I will acknowledge right from the very beginning that while February 10th wasn't all that long ago, it seems like a lifetime ago because much has changed in our world. And so I'd certainly be open as we go along today to be able to answer questions about where we think things could be going. I did just see a message come through, Mila. I don't know if this is something you might be able to help with. Deborah Judd, who I will definitely be relying on for some input later, just texted me that she has no audio. She's dialing in, so hopefully that will work. But if anyone can sort of be in touch with her, that would be helpful.
Okay, I will work on that.
And let me know if you need a phone number or something. But I see her name appears on the screen, but I don't know how much time you guys have spent doing troubleshooting today. But
if you actually give me 1 second, I'll try to unmute her.
Okay.
And see if she's available for us. Ms. Judd, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm going to leave her unmuted because she doesn't have the ability to do that herself.
Okay, I can't hear anybody speaking. I can hear you all. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah, it's not coming through the computer, which is strange.
Okay. So we sent over some tables for you, kind of what we view as the more simplified version of the budget. I don't know if that's something you'd like me to share on the screen or if you can just refer to it in front of you. It's a 5-page document just with the sort of high-level summaries of the budget that we approved. And I was thinking I would take a few minutes to walk through that. Is that something you can put on the screen, or will people be able to kind of refer to their own copy of it?
Ms. Dixon?
I would need that in a PowerPoint to be able to share that.
Okay.
So we all have it, Dr. Bolson, in front of us, if you just want to walk through it.
Sure, of course. Okay. So if you look on the first page, what we have here is the table, the high-level table of the revenue, and you see it has columns going back to FY17 actual. And then if you look all the way to the right, the second from the end and the third from the end are the FY21 budget. What we requested of the county was approval for an increase of local funds of $20,462,133. And as we all know and are very appreciative of, that County Executive Glassman has proposed fully funding that. We also have incorporated in there a $7.2 million increase from the state of Maryland. And then a little bit coming in from other sources for total revenue of $27,940,000. And right below that number, what you see is a negative $3 million, because what we were looking to do in this year's budget is reduce our reliance on fund balance, because we need to slowly build that up a little bit because there was so much fund balance used a couple of years ago. So the idea was that we would apply only $2 million of fund balance toward the budget next year. If we scroll down a little bit, you see a breakout between current expense for unrestricted and restricted. I guess what I would say is I'm happy to answer questions about that if you have any of those. We have sort of some differences in restricted this year because some of the Kerwin funds that came in last year were restricted. And of course, those were 2-year grants, the way they did that. So there's some things there that are Kerwin. So again, I can go back and answer questions if you have more about those later. And if you go down to the bottom of page 2, this is really something that I'm going to want to talk a bit more about. We really communicated our request in 2 broad areas. The first category, this is again the table at the bottom of page 2. This is a summary of the additions to the unrestricted operating budget. And we broke it into 2 categories. We titled them as mandatory baseline budget increases and then position restoration and enhancement of support. Our intention going forward is to fund and actually follow through on everything that's in this mandatory baseline budget increase. We really view those as the things that have to happen, mostly to address the increase in enrollment we saw last year. But also, like in transportation, we have some new programs coming online in our the early college high school at Joppatown and the computer science magnet that will be at Havre de Grace. So that's increasing some of our transportation costs as well. And then the second category below is what we call position restoration and enhancement of supports. And what this was, we took a look at, the cuts we did last year. We thought about where we might want to return some of those positions because the cuts we felt went a little too deep. But also if there were any adjustments for, different types of programs. For example, we're looking at growing some of our special ed programs. We've seen increasing enrollment there. I would argue at a faster pace than other enrollment. And so that's an area where we know we need to invest more resources. And so there are a number of categories here. But the reason I highlight this restoration enhancement of supports place is, as I suggested earlier, our reality in the school system has changed dramatically in the last 2 months. And we have begun a conversation about enhancing our capacity to deliver digital learning. And in more civilian speak, that we need to be better at teaching students online, at accessing them. We need to be able to put devices in our students' hands. And so looking at what it'll cost to put devices in their hands and to do all the training and planning that's necessary to do a good job with that. We're thinking of looking into this part of the funds, the $7.2 million, and considering reducing some of those positions so that we can divert funds toward digital learning. So that's a conversation that, again, I think we can talk about more in the question. If you go down to page 3, what you see is a slightly more detailed version of the mandatory baseline budget increases. And those are there where the categories are broken out. And then you go to page 4, and we've broken out the categories for that position restoration enhancement support part of the budget. And then the 5th of 5 pages we gave you is essentially a summary of what the county executive has proposed funding in our capital budget. And so you see the 3 yellow columns to the right essentially identify where the proposals were funded. And I think particularly draw your attention to right about the middle of the table where it says HCPS facilities master planning, $670,000. That will be a collaboration with county government, but that is our work to look at how we might balance enrollment and creating a master plan for our capital going forward. So I think this will lead to additional conversations in future years. But this could also be our planning that we use to see, again, balancing enrollment if we have to make any changes to our boundaries and those sorts of things. So in short, this would end up being about a 2-year process. So this is the funds just to start that planning. And we've actually just yesterday released, I think it was actually Tuesday, just released the RFQ for that particular contract so that we could possibly hire someone starting in July. So that is a very quick, high-level summary of the budget. So if you guys are comfortable with that level of detail, I'm very happy to turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bolson. Council, at this time, anyone with questions, please? Councilman Beulah.
Yes, thank you, Council President, and thank you, Dr. Bolson, for that presentation. Question along the lines of virtual learning or education and technology. It's my understanding that there's funding available from the CARES Act that will be going to the public school system that would provide a large amount for technology and virtual learning. Could you speak to that on that?
Absolutely. We don't know exactly how much would be coming our way, but there is federal money coming from the CARES Act, and we know that we can use a significant portion of that for digital learning. We also know that with the change in operations of schools, that we expect to have a larger than normal surplus come up at the end of this year, because there's some things, while we've continued operations in many areas, there's some things that we haven't been spending money on. Fuel, those sorts of things. And so if we can add funding from the CARES Act to what we anticipate being a larger than usual surplus, we think we can make some pretty big leaps forward in our ability to purchase. And in fact, we're actually talking about, this may lead to the next question, we're actually considering the possibility of leasing devices. But that is something that we still have to work out. There's a lot of questions around that type of thing, but we think combining the three sources, the CARES Act, surplus from this year, and then we think we will need to use some of the money from that part of the next year's operating budget to make this all come together.
Well, thank you. Next question, along making those devices available to students, and I want to speak particularly to those students where internet is not available. What are you looking at as far as options for those students?
We're not that far along yet, so there's much work to do on that front. So the two biggest barriers are access to devices and access to internet. And I think in terms of numbers, our access to devices is probably a bigger barrier than access to internet. So if we can start with the devices, we shrink our problem dramatically. But the internet is another issue. We know that some things have happened. We know partners like Comcast are doing some things to provide access to more people, particularly down in the area where they serve. But we also know we're going to need to do some creative things in the parts of the county that don't have access to broadband. And we're going to need some help. This is a planning process that for those kinds of things, we're going to have to do a lot more work. But I do think there are workarounds to some degree, but there's more to be done there.
Okay. I was just wondering where you were, and I'll stay in touch with you on those issues.
Sounds good.
Council President, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Beulah. Councilman Wagner.
Coming up right behind Councilman Beulah's questions there, Dr. Bolson, and I hate to go here, but my speculation is you won't be reopening schools the rest of this year, and that's not up to you to throw out any kind of a conjecture at this point either. I just wanted to say that on my part, as I move ahead looking towards the fall, if we saw a resurgence and it affected the first part of next year's school year, would we be in a different place than where we are right now with the school children's availability to get services any different than what they have today, do you think?
That is the goal. Knowing that anything we do now, I mean, we could start delivering devices, but the rollout of digital learning is not just a function of putting devices in people's hands. So the training that would need to go on this summer, there are opportunities, there will be opportunities this summer to ramp up. I think that we will need to do some work to manage people's expectations around what to expect if we do have a lot of devices. But the short answer to your question is, well, we haven't had a chance to go deep into this conversation with the board yet, because we've really been working on addressing where we are right now. The work in this area, I feel we could be significantly advanced in this work, but as every district around has tried to ramp this up quickly, has experienced, it's very hard work. A lot will happen, but I do think we'll be much farther down the path to a stronger digital learning program if we can get going on this right away.
Right, and you're right, it's threefold. I mean, first part is they've got to have access to it as far as the internet, which many in the Route 40 corridor do not. The top end of the county, many of those children up there do not. And then, of course, you've got the device itself plus the training to make sure that they can then get into it and handle it and work through it. And it puts a lot of burden back on the parents as well if they're going to be at home throughout the whole learning process. So it is a big nut to crack. I understand that. I just wanted to see if we're going to make some strides and trying to work towards having us in a little different place come September if things don't turn around quickly for us. What was the total of new psychologists that we may have added in your budget? Do you know the number there?
You're going to make me go back to the details. Give me 1 second. Let me pull that up, because that should be in the detail should be on page 4, if I have to guess. Let's take a look. I'm open to help from Deborah if she might remember that one off the top of her head.
Psychologists, I'm looking to refresh my memory, there are none in this particular budget.
But we did add psychologists in this past year. I know we've grown our numbers there, and we've also, one of the things that's happened over the last year is we increased the number of psychology interns that we support, and we actually pay a small amount for them to improve our pipeline in that area. We have counselors in the budget, and mental health has still been a big part of this. But yeah, I don't think it's new positions in this budget.
Okay, because I know that was definitely, and as well as I do, that's a need that's identified in certain school areas for certain elementary schools particularly, and of course middle schools as well. And large classroom size at some of the schools. The one closest to me would be Southampton. Are we looking at anything in the future to address some of that classroom sizes there?
Yes. Make sure I'm unmuted. Okay. Yes. So if you're looking at the detail, we have a couple things. We have up in the mandatory part, there are 22 positions of teachers. It says elementary and secondary positions, but in the mandatory part of the budget, which is that first section, those 22 positions are almost predominantly middle school, because that's where we saw the greatest enrollment growth, or actually where we saw the largest class sizes, and Southampton is very much part of that, as is Bel Air. They had some really big classes, and those schools have a lot of students in them. So we have 22 teachers in there to help us address some of that. And then there are a couple of other positions, because we're also looking at, and I don't remember exactly where they're to be assigned, but I know we have a few assistant principals going back at secondary, and also a few likely to go back at the elementary level.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Beulah?
Yes, following along with Councilman Wagner, Dr. Bolson, one of the things that that I observed and was brought to my attention. I've visited a number of schools, and basically it came out equal. It's not always equitable. A lot of the schools, especially your Charter 1 schools along the Route 40 corridor, shall we say, require or need a lot more psychologists because of disciplinary problems. And I'm just wondering, are you looking into that? Because there's a great need, and I'm looking at teachers that have students the teachers are being abused, kicked, spit on, and who wants to go to work under those conditions? And I'm just wondering, in this budget, because you haven't added any real new positions as far as psychologists, are you looking to kind of address that? Have you talked with your principals or anything? And, are you planning to do anything to address those? And instead of just saying, okay, we're giving each school 3 new positions, really looking at where the need is for those psychologists and positioning them there?
I guess in response to that, psychologists are one type of position in the broad spectrum of, what you need to manage whether it's student behavior or address student mental health issues or things related to that. In some cases, social workers, in other cases, counselors, in other cases, assistant principals, everyone contributes, particularly to the work of, behavior and discipline. So the positions that you see spread across these 2 sections of the budget are very much there to help us consider how we're dealing, and not just, it's not just a one-to-one thing we're doing. We started last year, last year's board, when we started allocating teachers to school, we used sort of an equity multiplier there when we did the allocation, which meant the schools with higher levels of poverty, the ratios of adults to students was a little bit better, and we're continuing that in this year. And so as we look at resources, there are additional resources going to, there are a slightly greater percentage of resources going to the schools with greater need, but, addressing things like behavior, mental health, those sorts of things. Additionally, addressing outright student performance. I know we need to assign more resources for all of those needs. And the staffing that we're using allows us to differentiate a little bit based on the need of schools. So you can look across the budget request to see a lot of areas where we are enhancing support for those schools. But, I would suggest that one part of this whole conversation is if we look at making changes to invest more in digital learning, as I indicated, some of those things in the second part of the budget, we may not be able to put back as much as we wanted because we'll need some of those funds to help us support the digital learning piece. So, we know those are decisions. Those are going to be philosophical decisions that we're going through over the next couple of months. But we're very aware of the needs and challenges, particularly of our schools in the southern part of the county. And so we're constantly chipping away at how we can provide differentiated and stronger supports there.
Okay, appreciate that. Like I said, it's just been brought to my attention. There's a lot of behavior issues, and it's a challenge for a lot of our elementary schools, as Councilman Wagner said. And as long as you're looking at it.
Yeah, well, and I know you finished up your visits just as we were getting ready to close down, and not just you. I know the visits we had. Mr. Schroeds in some of the schools up north. Mr. Vincenti spent a day with me. A lot of the council members have really spent some time in our schools, and I absolutely appreciate that. And so, seeing those experiences and be able to talk directly about what you're seeing is really helpful in terms of our work. So thank you.
Wow. Well, I'm far from finished. I got several more.
That's fine. You got to a bunch in a short period of time.
Yes. Well, thank you. That's all I have, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Buell and Mr. Schroeds.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Mr. Bolson.
Good afternoon.
It's wonderful to hear that the technology, is being bolstered. I know that's been a topic that's been around for years and years, and I've had many conversations with Drew Moore from your team, and I think it's good news to start thinking about, I think the time is right with, the extra funding, from the state and the CARES program, as well as the fuel budget, that hopefully we can switch over and to do the leasing program, as we realize technology, it goes out of date so quickly. It's going to be an expense, and whereas before, I mean, this might jumpstart, maybe it's in the capital now, but when I think of something as a capital program or capital improvement, I think of something that's worth something after you've purchased it or built it. With this, you really have nothing. You don't have any trade-in value, even like you would with a school bus, for example, or you build a building, it's built, you have it. It's probably never going to be more affordable than now to build something, to be honest. But it doesn't work that way with technology. So I think that is great that we're looking at going to a more leasing program. I think that the fear before was always the maintenance of effort, and once you build it in there, you got to fund it in future years, or the numbers aren't going to be there. So I believe that that's a big reason why we never saw it in the operating budget and through a lease. So I think that's great. My concern, as everyone knows, is the number one issue in Northern Harford County is lack of access to fast, reliable internet at an affordable price. And, we don't have that. As you know, I am a father. I have a 10-year-old in 4th grade. I know that not only her, but her classmates, I see on Facebook, we're part of a small group, not a public group. And it's just wild how I know we just got a package that all the students need to start completing, but they're all having difficulty. But it's even worse for the older kids. I live next door to my brother, and he has 3 kids, and one's in middle school, one's in high school, and it's even harder for them. So saying all that, I know you can't do anything about the infrastructure of cable or fiber or anything like that. I hope that we all can be a partner. I think that this council and the administration, along with the consultant that we have on board, and I look forward to their report, you all, I think we all should have a seat at the table moving forward. I realize that there's going to be tremendous amount of money going forward, coming from a federal budget through the Reconnect program and other programs to fund broadband and cable, FiOS into rural areas. And I'm hoping we get that next time. We thought we had it. There were 2 rounds that came and have went. And I know that Armstrong backed out of the deal. They have projects in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and the timing just wasn't right for them. I do know that they want to possibly be a partner in the future. And I just think we all really need to work together. And that even includes us communicating with our folks in the federal legislature, our congressmen and senators, to make sure that we get those funds as well. And I think that, we're going to be in a better place. If there's one positive thing that came out of this pandemic, it's that I think it's kind of woken us all up to how far behind we are in our connectivity. You can have the best devices, you can have the newest Apple device out there, but it's only going to work as well as it's going to connect to the rest of the world. So I just want us all to work together moving forward in technology, not only the devices, but the bigger, broader infrastructure. I think it would be a tremendous investment in our entire county, and not only for our students, but those that are working from home. So any help that you can put there. And I know that through this pandemic that you also may have data and demographics that maybe weren't part of what the county had when there was a survey done approximately maybe almost 2 years ago. So that may be another add-on to any future grant applications that we may have through the state and federal government. So hopefully we can all work together is what I want to say. I do have one other little project that maybe we can look at North Hartford High School that I know Eric Davis, part of your team, him and I had met at North Hartford and visited the wetland there that was constructed for the purpose of learning, but not only learning, but to do the right thing and have that wetland that was constructed costing tens of thousands of dollars, engineers, and it's been disconnected since the rebuild of North Hartford. I would like to see that project reconnected. So not only students can learn, but it can function as a wetland does, much like a kidney does for our bodies. We'll put cleaner water out into our watersheds. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. You touched on a couple of key things that I want to bring up. So I'll kind of work backward. The Wetland Project, I know less about the issues related to that. I know you had the meeting with Mr. Davis. And so I guess all I would say on that front right now is I think our partnership, our ability to kind of interact and communicate and talk through and work on things like that, I hope you're seeing the evidence of that continuing to improve. And we just had something happen this week where there was a discussion about the plants at North Hartford, and I think we have a team that's kind of hopefully brought a workable solution to that. And so these are the things where we reach out and we take care of these things for each other. So I hope to see that going well. On the connectivity front, I absolutely agree. I think this particular disruption we've all experienced has changed how we look at the importance of connectivity. A few weeks ago, all of the superintendents had a call with Senators Cardin and Van Hollen. And essentially the takeaway from that meeting from the superintendents was, if there's more stimulus or just even long-term, if you can just advocate for, how we might be better capable of refreshing our technology. But the second one is exactly what you're talking about, how we can come up with more national or federal solutions to support more universal connectivity, because that is an issue every school system faces, particularly as digital learning becomes more important. Now, from closer to home with regard to that, I've worked on digital learning work in other places, and there is technology that's out there that allow workarounds. It's not as good as a student having really great technology, but there are things we can look at to even improve the quality of students' ability to work asynchronously or not connected to the web. And we may need to employ some of those accommodations as we continue ramping up. Like I said, we alone, as you indicated, we alone cannot solve the connectivity issue in areas like North Hartford if the infrastructure isn't there, but we certainly want to be with you at the table to help advocate for that, because increasing urgency for us to get that solved as well. So we want to partner.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Dr. Bolson, President Robinson, and members of the school system here in Hartford County, thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your service to our young kids and students in Hartford County. Dr. Bolson, I kind of lost track where we were in questioning. So if I give you a question and you've already hit on it, then I apologize. But I'm just going to ask you about the one-on-one technology. At this time for the one-on-one technology, could you just explain why? I mean, I think we know why because of the coronavirus, but could you just explain why one-on-one technology now is that we need it now more than ever?
Well, I think everyone struggled with what the conversion, the movement from learning in school to learning at home looks like. As a school district, we've had a one-to-one initiative in place for 8 or 9 years, and we've been trying to build toward that. But as of this year, we had devices for 3 of the 14 grade levels we serve. But another issue relative to that is our one-to-one work up to this point was for devices that students had access to at school, but none of our devices were programmed to be at home. And so that's part of the shift that we need to undergo now, is how we go from going one-to-one where you're using those devices in school to something that you'd have students taking these home, which is, I really believe, it's an important part of any one-to-one learning environment, because our inequities are greater when the students are at home, I would say, than when they are in school, because that's where you really see the differences between what our students have access to emerging. So that'll be a big part of the work we're doing, because there's a lot of implications for thinking about how you make devices available for people to take home. So there's a lot of work we have to do to shift from in-school only to at home. But and again, you've seen varying success. We have districts all over the state that are farther ahead of us in terms of students' access to devices, or the degree to which they've delivered devices to students to be able to access more learning at home. But everyone's struggling with it. It's a hard task, and it's not something I would argue any public school district was fully prepared for. So that's just something that we're doing a lot of work on. But for us, because we didn't have as many one-to-one devices in our schools and none of them were programmed to go home, that's something that's made our transition to this even harder.
Well, thank you very much. And what area of the budget would computers and hotspots and technology equipment come from?
Well, as I sort of touched on the very beginning, we're going to need to use a combination of FY20 money and FY21 money. The FY20 money is, we're looking at the CARES Act funds that are coming in from the federal government. And, as soon as those are in place, we can, we'll have a sense of what we have there. I've also indicated that we have surplus funds from this year that will essentially roll into fund balance if we don't spend them, but some of those surplus funds we can use to purchase devices this year. But then the next year part is as I shared in the two sections of the enhancements to the budget. The second section there, which is labeled, let me pull it up again to say it right. The one that's labeled FY21 position restoration and enhancement and support. That's a $7.2 million category of the budget. And the board has not made any final decisions about this, but if we have to use any operating funds for next year to fund the purchases we want to do, we'll need to reduce some of the positions we were planning for in that category. So that's that, like I said, position restoration, enhancement, and support. We'd reduce some of the positions we're putting back there to supplement what we may need for technology. So that's where it would come from.
Thank you. And how will you ensure that students are able to use the technology? And will there be any classes to show students how to operate or build skills to use those systems?
Well, the greater issue is ensuring adults have the capacity to do it, because the students pick it up a lot quicker than we do in many cases. So a lot of it is the training. But of course, right now, we are all completely at the mercy of what, whether we're opened or closed or that sort of thing. We know that any conversion to doing more digital learning requires a great deal of training. That means training the students, as you're suggesting training the teachers, but then all the leadership in the buildings, and just as importantly, training parents, providing guidance for parents in terms of how to help and support that. We have some things going on with our Parent Academy work. We have a couple of videos that have gone out, but I see that being a really critical part of what we're doing. So for your younger students, so the parents know how to best to guide their children when they're in a home learning environment, because there's still a lot of responsibility that lands on the parents in any home learning circumstance. But then if we are able to bring students back to school in the fall, it's something that, making sure they're proficient in the use of those devices will be a high priority. But rolling out 38,000 devices logistically takes some time. And so, should we be able to come back in person in the fall, that's something else we have to map out a plan for. And, again, not knowing if we'll be back live and in person in August or September. But then possibly, is there a chance we'd be looking at another closure at some point? And we really have no sense of what's going to happen there, but I think everyone thinks there might be some kind of chance that there's a resurgence that we confront, and we need to be much farther along in this if that comes.
Is there any money budgeted for additional training for the teachers?
Not budgeted. That's why we're going to need to make changes. That plan needs to get developed. We just started a conversation with the board at the last meeting this past Monday night. We'll be meeting with them again on May 4th, and I'll be giving much greater detail around digital learning. But this is something in terms of planning for a conversion like this that we will be working on very aggressively, starting, now. But I guess actually, if I could add one more detail, it is very much my intention. I mean, it's been great to have the conversations with council members through the year. I mean, one of the reasons I bring this up now is I want to make sure that you all stay in the loop with any adjustments we make, because this really is a community effort.
And thank you. What supports are you going to put forth in place to support parents who don't understand content, or will you have any supports for parents that don't understand content that's coming home for the child?
So there's a couple answers to that. Actually, today, it might be on our website now. If not, it's going out to our entire community tonight, is the parents' guide for at-home learning. So we've been working on developing and delivering that support to them for the last couple of weeks. And so again, there's a guide for that going out now. So that's going to be available electronically. But as I said, our Office of Family, the Family and Community Partnerships, particularly the Parent Academy work, is really the best resource we can lean to. We had some really great Parent Academy events going through this last school year, and they were ramping up, and we've now done 2 Parent Academy videos since we've closed down. Of course, they've had to move virtual, but they've been right in line with the type of thing you're asking about now, which is, one was about how to help your students with mental health through this time, and then the other one was more just about how to focus on at home and remote learning.
Thank you. And my final question, and I hope I don't feel like I'm peppering you with questions, but my last question is, I know that you get a lot of pushback from certain parts of the county about the equity of distribution of the school system, and the question would be the reduction of the staff. Could you speak on that? Of staffing, the reduction of staffing.
Well, again, first of all, I mean, the questions are helpful, and the pushback is helpful to know that people are engaged in giving us the feedback. This year's budget, and in fact, even thank you for the funding proposal, because this will be the first year that we've actually employed more staff in a year than the previous. This will be the first time we don't cut staff. We're going to be adding a few, and while we may not be able to add back every staff position that we had hoped in this operating budget, because we might need to make some decisions to spend a little differently. Our strategy is very much, as I kind of answered in the question before, focused on assigning the staff we do have in a manner where it's about addressing needs. And so it's not everyone gets the same thing. It's more focused on what individual schools and individual communities need. And so, but as I say that, it's not arbitrary either. Some of the work that's been going on for nearly 2 years now is working to ensure we can describe, the formulas we're using to make sure we're deliberately differentiating based on need. And so that's an important part of everything we're doing. And I think, and I'd be happy to, sometime when we get back to a world where we're able to meet in person, or we can do this remotely, I can sort of walk you through how we're looking at that staffing and some of the things we're doing to consider how we differentiate from the schools with a greater need.
Well, Dr. Wilson, I want to thank you once again for your honesty and your candor. I want to thank the members of the school board for their hard work and dedication. And trust me, we truly appreciate your service to our kids and our students of this great county. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. Wagner.
I believe Mr. Boniface is still on with us. I just wanted to ask between Mr. Boniface and Dr. Bolson if the county had any resources or an agency or the IT department or somebody there at the county level that could help the Board of Education address some of the concerns that we're talking about here.
Well, we haven't had any discussions with Mr. Bolson in regards to what his needs are other than what we've allocated in the budget. So,
we've
moving forward, we'll have those discussions.
We've had some conversations, big picture, with regard to technology. I think we've had some very promising discussions about things like phones and other areas that I think some of those were going on before our lives all changed in February. I think we've had some really good conversations with Mr. Boniface and his staff in operations around those types of things. With regard to this current technology issue and the devices and instruction, we haven't gotten to that point yet. I mean, of course, County Executive Glassman's proposal to fund the budget was the single greatest type of support we could hope for, and it puts us in a position to be a little more aggressive in addressing this, knowing that counties all over the state are really concerned about this, and I feel like the support from this county to be able to move forward in this is really a great benefit for us.
And I guess, Dr. Bolson, as you move forward to looking at the purchases of laptops and so forth for the children in our county, there'd be a cost savings to be realized by going through the state, wouldn't there? Wouldn't they have some provision? Because I know everybody's in the same situation, looking at the buys as far as Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Harford County, you name it, we're all in the same position, aren't we?
Well, so we've begun looking at and getting quotes for devices, and of course we're able to have those conversations with our colleagues in other districts, and so they're all buying as well, and we know what kind of prices they're getting. It is a concern because we're competing with all those districts for these devices. But yeah, there's always the benefit of reaching out to the network we have to help us in this, and so from what I'm seeing in terms of the quotes, and I think we have good relationships. We're fortunate to have Drew Moore, who's our manager, our director of technology, who's been doing this for quite a long time and has some really good relationships built up. So I feel like, there's a lot we can leverage, a lot of talent around the state to come.
Right. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you do. And I will just touch on the fact that visiting all the schools in my district, I was very impressed, as I told you, at another setting that we were at one time where we could actually meet personally and talk about it. The teachers that you've got on board are doing a fine job. The principals that you've got out there, they've all stepped up and done a great job in schools and in the areas where could be challenges, and they're doing a fine job. And I was very well pleased and satisfied with what I saw in all the schools that we visited. I think it was some 13 that we hit, and it was a good visit, and look forward to hitting some more in the future, and wish them all the very best as we move on through this pandemic.
Again, thank you for your visiting, your attention, and even you sent me some feedback, and we were able to act on that. And so that's what this kind of partnership's about. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? Do we have any of our citizen budget advisors that have any questions? Mr. Tibbs?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I saw you unmute your mic. That's all I needed, sir.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask Dr. Bolson a couple of questions about his budget. In the past, we've talked about the administration is having more people than what they needed, and I see he's got a 11% increase in his administration's budget. And I was wondering what that was, more positions or classified different positions, or how they was come up with that figure.
I'd have to go over and look at what you're looking at. But so one thing about the positions in this budget, the new positions we've added, while some of those positions are housed in central office, we did not add a single administrator level position in this new budget. So that's one of the elements. If I might ask Ms. Judd to step in on the 11% and what could add to that 11%. But we've been very cognizant of the majority of this budget is either directly to school base or support for teachers. And so where you see, for example, curriculum specialists, where you see instructional coaches, this is all about providing the additional support to schools. And those were some of the things that Mr. Beulah was referencing, and some of his concerns for schools and the way we help those schools. But just to reiterate, not a single administrator position added to the central office in this budget.
Thank you there. I was just looking at your summary of the proposed budget, and that's where I saw that under the executive administration, and it had gone up 11%. That's what I was looking at.
Mr. Titz, can you tell me what page number you're on? Are you looking at?
I think on the one I have is page 2 of 9, but I think it's page 2 of 5.
Okay, let me.
The title on the page is Summary of Board of Education Proposed 21 Budget.
Okay, let me see if I can find the same spot you're looking at.
I'm looking for that 11% number. I don't.
No, I am too.
It went from 186 million last year to 195. I'm sorry, I'm looking at salaries there. 1,848,000 last year to 2,059,000 this year.
Mr. Tibbs is looking at the analysis of the school board budget. And so it's the second page of that document, which is a summary of,
If I may, Ms. Brooks, if you could get closer to your microphone, please.
Okay, can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think what Mr. Tibbs is referring to is the auditor analysis of the school board budget. And I'm trying to find the table that that information comes from. It's going to be on page 77 of the Board of Education proposed budget. I think the changes are largely within family and community partnership, which is a newish department for the school.
If I may, because your sound still.
Yeah, I see. So I found the document that Mr. Tibbs is referencing because I had a copy from Ms. Brooks. So this is from the analysis document that I believe Ms. Brooks prepared, and it's in draft form. So we had there's a $200,000 increase in this executive administration. Ms. Judd, I believe that $200,000 increase is the funding. It was the budget we were looking to put in for the Office of Family and Community Partnerships. So I'm going to try to toggle over and see if those numbers match, because that was
Very well be the case.
Well, that was a $202,000 item. So again, it's a $200,000 item. Yes.
Eric Clark here. That was the position that we had, or the two budgets that we established for communications and family outreach and family community partnerships. The other difference would be any increases in salaries for the existing positions.
So that's the estimate of the increases in the existing positions, which are essentially anticipating the COLA that were in the step increases.
That included the audiovisual technician that we had included in the communication family outreach. So there was one additional position there. So salary for that and the establishing the budgets for those two areas.
Okay, so that's an 11% increase of a fairly small part of the budget, but that's because of that addition in it's the communication and family outreach, and so that's actually the team that is looking to do a lot of what Councilman Johnson was asking about, is how we help prepare parents for this type of work, and that was an area that we wanted to enhance that parent outreach work.
Thank you very much. On one other question I would have is North Hartford. That's near, as you know, is near and dear to my heart. Last year I spoke with you about a livestock trailer, and I thought that was already being taken care of from Perkins. And to this, we have not seen that at the school. And I'm just wondering what was the problem there.
I would have to get some help on that answer. And so, but I can take a note of that one and get back on the answer there. Our person who helps manage the Perkins is Mr. Limpert, who does the CTE work. But there's let me find out where we stand on that, but we can get a response back to you on that.
I appreciate that very much, because that is it. The ag program at there is so nice. I mean, it is just nationwide. Everyone enjoys about it. And something like this where they can haul their animals around, or if they have a problem, it's so much better for the kids to be able to understand that they have transportation for those animals rather than calling on someone else and contaminating the area with a bad trailer or something. So
right, okay. Yeah, we've had some visitors. I know we had some board members from St. Mary's County come up, and I ran into them in a meeting, and they were so impressed with the program we have going up there. And we just had the state superintendent visit North Hartford just about a month before we shut down. And again, she went to see all of we focused on the ag program with her, and just really impressed. And so we know there's great work going up there. We want to do the best we can to support that. So I'll make sure we get you a response on that.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbs. Seeing no one else with any questions, Dr. Bolson, I want to just take a moment just to thank you for your availability. I appreciate not only you, but Mr. Robinson and Mr. Brown. Whenever I have a question, Mr. Clark, Ms. Judd, you guys are all right there for me. As soon as I dial, I get you right away. So I appreciate that very much. I do have one question for all of you, I guess. We talked with the county executive this morning. We talked about the uncertainty of revenue streams moving forward. And I was just wondering, Dr. Bolson, if you've heard anything in relation to Kerwin funding moving forward.
I have not. I know that's a question, and because the governor has said multiple times in his press briefings that he, won't be looking at things that increase state budget. We know that the state budget that he put that freeze in place a couple of weeks ago. We haven't had other questions about Kerwin. Now, much of the Kerwin money that was expected to come this way was already in the budget for this coming because it was a 2-year. Most of what was done last year was 2-year budget. So we expect that those funds were already in place. And so the increases they were really talking about wouldn't be hitting in this fiscal year. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens there, because I know that's a big part of the budget, and it's something important for us going forward. But at the same time, with all the uncertainty, I think we can anticipate to see some changes there.
And then one last item of importance, I think, for a lot of our seniors is moving forward with graduation. I know that one of your board members, Christian Walker, sent us an email with some thoughts and proposals that the students, the seniors themselves were thinking about, and I'm sure you've received that as well. And have you given any thought moving forward yet?
Well, yeah, in fact, Christian isn't just meeting alone with students. It was this week, I think it was Tuesday, the Christian assembled a group of representatives where we had a senior from each high school who met with we had a team already working on planning things like that, but that was predominantly administrators, school leaders, representatives from schools talking about that. And so we added 10 students to the mix, and they had a conversation earlier in the week. They have some proposed ideas, and Mr. Walker has really kind of been the spokesperson. He drafted the proposal and sent that to us. We're kind of holding off any final decisions until we have a sense of really the closure and all that. But, I think we all can see that, we're not going to do normal graduations, or it's very unlikely, because the idea of putting 3,000 people in one space is not something we see in the foreseeable future. But I think they came away with some really good ideas, and it's great to have the student participation in that, and honored particularly with Christian's leadership. And so we should be able to roll a plan out to the community fairly soon.
Very well, good to hear. And I would not trade positions with you for anything. I think Councilman Wagner made a similar comment to the county executive this morning. So we appreciate all that you do. Look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you.
Thank you all. It's great to have a good team here in town, both those who work in the school system and those in the county. So again, thank you so much. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to send them, and we will keep you posted on the work we're doing to make any changes as needed.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Be safe.
You too. Thanks.
Council, moving forward at this time, it's our pleasure to welcome our state's attorney, Mr. Al Peisinger. Al, are you on?
Can you hear me, Mr. President?
We can, sir. How are you today?
We're well. I'm here with Ms. Bidler also.
How are you today?
We're doing good today. Working hard. The wheels of justice have not stopped.
Well, we're going to get ready to turn it over to you. And it sounds like we're getting a lot of feedback.
Move it closer. Does that help?
Yes, I believe so. Mike, are you picking that up too? Okay. All right, you go right ahead and speak. I'm gonna mute my mic.
Okay. Well, first, I'll say thank you to the county and the council for supporting us last year. One of the things that we did ask for, and the county and the council approved, was a new position for an IT person to be housed here with the state's attorney's office as an employee. Mr. Oderby came in as a temporary employee, but without him, we would be lost over these past 5 years. I can assure you of that. And he is invaluable to this office, and has actually worked out very well. So I really appreciate the support that you gave us last year. And that's just one example of when we had this meeting, when I asked for that position and we got it, how it has really helped this office move forward. Without him over the past 5 weeks, he was able to get our office remote, and we were able to set up teams to work in the small environments to follow those orders of social distancing and bring as few people as possible, and work with the court with still having hearings every single day. So that has worked out very well. So thank you for that. It appears that from the part, we are at par of what we've asked for again. So we appreciate that, and we would ask for your support to add that for us. It seems like the biggest increase to our budget is the increase in Mr. Glassman's 2% increase overall to the county employees, and the $2,000 increase, which we appreciate. I know my employees appreciate that. So that's the biggest increase to our budget. As I mentioned last year, being fiscally responsible, we did move forward with introducing one of the bills into the Maryland legislation to move 12 people from our office, which we call our Family Support Division, over to the state. The 3 lawyers after those individuals will go to the AG's office. The 9 individuals that are not lawyers will go to the Department of Human Services. Both of those bills, the House bill passed without any opposition, and the Senate bill passed without any opposition. Also, it is sitting on Governor Hogan's desk to be signed. My understanding, signed or not by May 7th, that will be effective law. And what that equates to is the savings of it for the county of $544,000 this year. Next year, it's approximately $560,000 because it has a 3% increase annually. So we save over the next 3 years approximately $1.6 million, $1.7 million for the county. It doesn't show exactly in my budget, but the county match to that grant. The state will pick up 100%, and we will no longer have to pick up a percentage, and it saves the county that money. So that equates to approximately about 12.5% reduction that we obligate the county on, having those 12 individuals employed under the state's money. So that is actually very fiscally responsible. I will tell you, between Ms. Fiddler and I, we're very frugal. We spend every penny wisely, so we appreciate it. We operate at about a 3% operating budget. 97% of our budget is personnel costs, mostly salaries. So we have a very small operating that we stretch as thin as we can. That being said, I really think it's important to look into the future for us. One of the things that I mentioned last year, and I would like to reiterate, and I think I'll start mentioning a lot more, being new to this, after being here 16 months, it's become quite evident that we have outgrown our space. We will need a new location. We house 4 locations now on Main Street. As of July 1, when family support over to the state, it will stay in that building, but it will no longer be us. So I will be in 3 buildings on Main Street. I have individuals, I have lawyers double up in offices that are designed for 1. It's a huge safety issue. I will point out again, perfect example. We had a prosecutor trying a case that will bring out the fact that she's female. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's female, but it goes more to the safety issue I'll get to. The defendant was also being charged with murder, was convicted of murder, was also female, but on the street on bail. So during this trial, if that prosecutor had to use the restroom, there would be no reason that the defendant be not in that restroom with her. The reason I bring out their genders is because I've been here 16 months. I won't say that there has not been a female deputy that does court security, but on a regular basis, the 8 deputies that are assigned to us here at the courthouse for security are all men. So if something would have happened in the bathroom or something, there's no reason to be there to even look for that. So it's a huge safety issue, having my prosecutors having to use the same restroom as the general public. Defendants' families, we are an adversarial system. Not everybody likes what we have to say or do. Not everybody walks out of this courthouse happy. So it is a safety issue that we have to use the same restroom for the general public. We also now, we have to go through security to even use the bathroom. We come to our workplace here at the courthouse, and for my staff to have to use the restroom, they have to go through security to use the restroom. There's lines sometimes, there's emergencies. It's not fair to the staff that we can't even go to the restroom without telling the courthouse security what we're doing. So we're outgrowing our space. I would ask you to take into consideration. It's a little bit of a rookie. I'm not sure if we need to add for a capital budget next year, what we need to do. I mentioned in December when we had the delegation meeting, or our pre-legislation delegation meeting, the delegation of Hartford County seemed quite open to listening. I mentioned Mr. Glassman, all unofficially. I have an idea, I have a plan that I'd like to start presenting to individuals that can make a difference to help us out with that. One of the other issues, we have a conference room that is designed for 10 people. Every other week, we put 23 Hartford County citizens crammed into one room. In addition to that, there's a witness and a prosecutor. So there's actually 25 people crammed into a room designed for 10 to hold a proceeding. We call grand jury. It's not fair to the citizens of Harford County that have to sit on that jury, to have to cram into a room for 23 designed for 10. My design and plan would help relocate that room to a much larger room to facilitate that. I don't have a room where I can put more than probably 12 prosecutors. At medium one, we have 35 prosecutors. So I have to go find space if I would have an office-wide meeting or even a team meeting. For professional development, it would help, so that is one location. So I will be phone calls and any suggestions of who I need to talk to. Would be greatly appreciated. And I know it can't happen tomorrow, but it's a plan for us. So I'll just bring everybody's attention that I'd like help with that down the road. So other than that, I'd like to thank county and the county for your continued support. We're doing well. We're working hard and trying to keep Harford County as safe as possible. Unmute yourself, Mr. Count.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Typically, my colleagues don't have a problem hearing me, nor do they want to hear me. But anyhow, we appreciate you coming before us today. Now, I will tell you that your connection to us is very has a lot of backfeed in it, a lot of clutter. We were having some difficulty hearing what you said. We kind of got some highlights and bits and pieces. I did hear the $1.6 million that you've saved the county by working closer with the state. Appreciate that. Did hear that you were cramming 25 people into a 10-person conference room. And so I will probably be reaching out to you again personally, but council members, anybody have any comments or questions of the state's attorney? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. State's Attorney Plessinger, how are you today?
Wonderful.
Okay, I have two questions. And could you meet? There you go. The one thing is the first question I have is the Family Justice Center was moved from its own index and combined into the state's attorney's index. Do we have a Family Justice Center?
Yes, sir. That was done really more for convenience. We had to maintain two separate budgets, which really made no sense. So we combined two budgets, and then Ms. Fiddler can actually operate under one budget and not two. So no resources were changed. We still have a Family Justice Center. It is located at 45 West Main Street. It is right next to the Armory. And we, from my side, we house our domestic violence, our sexual assault, and our child abuse prosecutors are out of there with their support team. And also along with local law enforcement is embedded there, along with DHS, SART, and Family Children Services.
Very good. And how much money goes to that, and how is that determined?
We don't have a breakdown. So basically what we're responsible for is the upkeep. So toilet paper, the paper that's going through the copier. We're responsible for the maintenance of the copiers. We just trying to think the general office supplies. So it's basically Ms. Fiddler separates it out. We can look historically what we have spent there. They're not being cut back or anything. It's been lumped together. So now instead of two separate office supplies, optics, it's all under one.
Gotcha.
And actually, it's worth. It's still coming out of all one part of the county, but the sheriff's office helped us out this year. The optics expenses were getting a little bit higher than they had in the past. I reached out to them since they encompass the other building. Sheriff Keller was kind enough to say, you know what, I'll pick up $600 for you. So it was really helpful. So we shared a little bit of that expense, and it has helped us have that little bit of cushion to make sure we can get through the whole year.
Sounds good. And the question is, what happened to the federal grant funding, which was decreased from $830,000 and the matching funds of $515,000. Why, where was that removed from the why was that removed from the budget?
That's the child support unit that's going to state. That's the savings I addressed. So it's not that money is under the right next to Sunday. We have our child support unit. We call it the family support unit. And that is what those 12 individuals are moving under the state, under the legislation that we entered. So that's the things that we're saving the county, that the county had to pay that match the grant. There's no longer that match we're paying. So that's the match we're paying that we don't have to pay anymore.
Okay.
There's no more incumbents on the county to pay that. That's not, nobody else incurred that cost. The state incurred. Nobody from the county incurred. The state incurred that cost, not us.
Okay, tracking. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service.
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. Wagner.
I seldom compliment State's Attorney Peisinger in the way that I'm going to, but certainly since he's taken office, he has done a very good job of being frugal, living certainly within his means there budgetarily at the location that he's at. And he should be very proud of the conviction rates that they've gotten through his tenure over about 16 months. And I hear nothing but good things about his service and his staff out on the streets. And with that, I will just say thank you for your service, Al, and we look forward to the upcoming year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, how about our budget advisors? Anyone have a question? All right, seeing none, Mr. Peisinger, we really appreciate you coming and speaking with us, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So this will end our presentations today, but I want to go to our citizen budget advisors individually. Dr. Hill, if you can hear me, I want to thank you for participating, and I want to give you the opportunity for any questions that you may have from today at all, if you'd like to take it.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to participate. To the council and to our officials who have presented, no questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Council President. No, I also have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Reppert.
Thank you, Council President Vincente. I don't have any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to serve in this role, and let's all keep Tony in our thoughts for today. I hope to hear from him tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Tibbs.
I have nothing else at this time. I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to be on this committee and see things forward.
Thank you for being there today. I really thought you were a dinosaur, but you proved me wrong today.
You can teach old dogs new tricks once in a while.
I agree with that now for sure. Mr. Scotton.
I just got word that Mr. Scotton can't respond back. If Mila would probably call him after we're done today and try to set it up for tomorrow, I'd appreciate it.
He's unmuted now.
I just unmuted him.
Mr. Scotton, are you there? I guess not. Ms. Hergenhot?
Thank you, Mr. Vincenti. My only request is if perhaps Milo could send all the citizens' budget advisors each other's emails so that we could email together so that after this is over on Monday, we can figure out how to get together to complete our recommendations to council.
Ms. Hergenhan, I believe what I'll do is I'll have Mr. Ondish do that. He's going to speak now if he's available. I believe your mic's not hooked up correctly, Mr. Ondish.
Mr. Vincenti, we have time to figure this out. This isn't urgent.
It's not about that. I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak if he wanted. So we'll yeah, go get him. Hold on just a minute.
All right, sorry about that, guys. So yeah, what I have a list of everybody's email, and I was helping here behind the scenes with them just to be able to make sure we could get this off the ground. And what I'll do is start that dialogue that Cynthia was just reflecting upon and allow us all to share those thoughts. And I'm going to get with the council president and also with Mila about how this is going to work this year. Obviously, it's going to be a lot different than what most of us have dealt with in the past. And then Mr. Hill, I'd like to reach out to you personally too, as a new member of the board and kind of walk you through that process. So I'm going to start that dialogue with the council president here this afternoon and get an email out that you should see before the end of the evening.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for everybody for tuning in and working through this with everybody together.
All right. Well, thank you all. And I guess we will see you tomorrow. Now, I'm hoping that all of you received the revised agenda for tomorrow. Due to the fact that everything seemed to move along very fast today, we've made some adjustments to try to speed things along. So if I don't talk to you this evening, I will talk to you first thing in the morning. Thank you.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.